I'm with you and everybody with you, so don't give up. I know you are not giving up. I could tell from your face from that video.
A tragically familiar scene now, an ISIS terrorist with his face covered in a knife in his hand and a couple of hostages on their knees in orange jumpsuits, and the threat of death, which of course has been carried out on camera and distributed. In this case, the two Japanese hostages have, as far as we know, not been killed, as the hostages, as ISIS rather, demands $200 million or else. Joining me now, Tim Clemente, former counterterrorism FBI agent. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Now, if it were up to you, the human tragedy that you know you're dealing with, what would you say if someone said, give them the money?
Well, I can completely empathize with anyone wanting to get a loved one, a coworker, a friend, or a relative back by paying a ransom. But what they have to understand is, you just did a story about the Prime Minister saying that oil is not the only source of revenue, it's not the only part of the economy in Canada. Well, oil isn't the only source of revenue for the economy of ISIS. Kidnapping and extortion are a big part of their revenue, and if people pay ransoms, they're literally supporting terrorism, and it's what the Iraqi government has pleaded with countries not to do, because to the Iraqi government, this is a direct support of a terrorist operation that is working against the Iraqi people and the Iraqi government.
What's the thinking on what Japan is likely to do? They're new in this.
Well, they're not entirely new. I mean, according to some of my sources on the ground in Iraq, they may have already paid ransoms for prior kidnapped victims.
Okay.
So it's something that a dozen countries have taken part in and paid ransom, always secretly. I can't confirm any of it publicly, but there's rumors on the ground over there that many ransoms have been paid to the tune of better than $100 million total. And that $100 million goes a long way when ISIS's primary role over there is raping Yazidi women, torturing and killing children, and throwing homosexuals off the roof of buildings and then shooting them. That's the activities they take part in with the money that they raise from whatever sources. So this isn't like negotiating with another company or even another legitimate country. We're dealing here exclusively with a terrorist group, and all they do is instill terror.
Tim, it's ironic in a way that one of these Japanese individuals went over there apparently to get involved with ISIS, to be involved in the jihad. The other is a journalist, and with the journalist, that's where it gets more difficult. I mean, it would be a little easier to say, hey, guy went over there to get involved in jihad, he gets what he gets.
Yeah, I don't know which side of the jihad he wanted to get in, whether he was going over there to fight the jihadists or whether he was going to join the jihadists. But either way, I could see how ISIS would be very welcoming and accepting him and taking him as a hostage. The other individual, a journalist, we've seen over the last couple of decades how many journalists have been captured and killed by Islamic extremists. There are no rules of etiquette and rules of war when we deal with an enemy like this, and no journalist is safe when they're in the territory that is controlled by an entity like ISIS, as we can see in this circumstance and many others, unfortunately.
One of the ways they make money is they steal oil and then sell it, and so I guess they're impacted like anybody else that sells oil. I've never gotten anyone to answer the question, who buys it from them?
The black market in oil is not very hard to sell. When you have a commodity and the commodity is being sold at a lower price than the general market, I know they run it sometimes through Turkey, but there's no shortage of individuals. I mean, we had a case years ago in Iraq, about 6 years ago, where an individual literally tapped into an Iraqi pipeline and was selling oil on the black market individually from a little compound he had near Basra, Iraq, and he made upwards of $10 billion doing that in a very short period of time.
But
so it's a very, very, very...
I'm sorry, aren't the customers for oil nations, essentially?
No, there's private carriers. You can fill an oil tanker, and then the oil tanker go sell it on the market somewhere else. And if you own a tanker service, or you own, if you're Texaco Oil or Exxon Oil, and you can find one or two tanker loads for a quarter or a half of the market price and then sell it at the market price elsewhere. That's a pretty good profit margin for a very low risk operation.
I'm sure you're right that nations have, under the radar, paid ransoms and brought their citizens back, and it may well be Japan as well, as you've said. But now this one's not under the radar. ISIS has put it out there. So what's your supposition? Do you think Japan will go along with it?
Well, I think the $200 million ransom demand I see as a purely symbolic gesture on ISIS's part. They're trying to slap Japan in the face for saying they would offer $200 million in the fight against ISIS. So demanding that $200 million as an extortionary ransom for kidnapping victims is very symbolic. At the same time, I think there are negotiations probably going on as we speak to bring that dollar amount down to a reasonable figure, probably in the $5 to $10 million range, to try and get those people released. The unfortunate thing is the end result might be that those two individuals do come home to their families and to their country, and that's a great thing. The unfortunate side of it, though, would be that $5 or $10 million ransom, if it is paid, would go towards promoting this effort by ISIS and in kidnapping other individuals and allowing them to complete their reign of terror further and further into the Western world.
Tim Clemente, thanks so much.